In this video, I'm going to show you the rendering workspace inside of Fusion. So, we're currently in a design workspace. And what we're going to do first is create a new component. And I'm just going to create one quickly to show you an example. So now we've got our model. And I'm going to move this into the render workspace. So, to do that, I click on Design. Then I come down here and I click on Render. Now you can see we're in the render workspace, and it won't look too realistic to start with, but I just want to show you the render settings first. And we have our browser like we've got in the design workspace, and from here we can see all the different elements of our design. And I'm going to go through these with you now. So if you click on this one, Appearances, this is where you're able to change the appearances of your model. So I click on that, and now yours may already be dropped down, but I need to click this plus icon to drop this down. And here you can see what's currently being used on our design. This is the steel satin, so that's this one here. That's why it kind of looks like this kind of grey material. And then you can see the library here. So we have a collection of all the different materials that we can use. So for this model, I want to click on Paint. And then you can see I've got different types of paints here, like this glossy black. And you may need to download these ones. So to download them, you can click on this little download icon here. And that will download them. And to change the materials, I simply drag this onto the model that I want to change. And you can see now that that's changed that to black. And we've got this in our design. And if I right click on this and press edit, I actually have this custom box here that allows me to edit this. So I can change the colour here. I can also change the roughness, which is how shiny the material is, and also how reflective it is as well. So now, if I click on done here to close out of that, this is how the appearance is working. So now I'm going to click on close. You can also position your view using this view cube. And this is how your camera is going to be positioned when you do your final render. So I'm going to move that into position now. Next, we've got the scene settings. So if I click on scene settings, I'm going to move this over here first of all. And then we've got the brightness. You can use this to increase or decrease the brightness of the lighting in your scene. Then we've got position. This allows you to position your environment to change your highlights and your reflections. And here we have background. This allows you to either view your environment for a background or alternatively a solid colour. Then we've got colour of the background. So if you've got a solid colour selected, you can change this colour. Now we have ground, and here we have the ground plane. This allows you to have shadows in your scene. This checkbox is for flattened ground. And here we have reflections, which will give reflections onto the ground plane. So I'm going to switch this on, and you can see here that additional settings come up for the roughness. And the roughness is basically how shiny that material is. So if it's set to 0, it'll be a complete mirror. Next, we have the camera, and this is currently on perspective. And the perspective view simulates how the human eye would see depth and also distance. So if you'd like a more realistic looking render, it's good to leave it on this setting. And here we have the focal length, and this works the same as a camera's focal length does. So product photography is usually shot at something between 50 and 100 millimeters. And if you'd like to learn more about this, there's a lot of photography tutorials that go into a lot of depth on this topic, and the same principle applies here. Next, we have exposure, and this again works in the same way as a camera's exposure does. So it basically tells you how much light the camera is letting in. And here we have depth of field. And depth of field is great for making renderings look more realistic. It makes the background of your image blurry, like a camera with a large aperture would do. So I'm going to select that, and then you can see this green dot comes up where we can choose where we want our focus to be. Then, on this button, we can save this as a default if we like. Or we can restore it back to how it was when we started. So now I'm going to click close on this, and we'll come back to that later. So next we have decals, and decals are basically like stickers. So if I click on this decal, and then I click on it, And then I'm going to insert that from my computer and drop it onto the face of this model. So I'm going to rotate this around and move it into the middle. And we can make this bigger or smaller. So we've got this one on the face that we selected, then we have the opacity, then this is for the dimensions, and also for the scaling. And we can flip it around here if we'd like to. So here we're going to click OK on that. Now, we can't really see this because it's a black sticker on a black background. So what I'm going to do is come back here and click on Appearance. And I'm going to change this to a different colour. Let's say grey. So this is the grey paint. And I drop that on here. And then I'm going to click on Close. Next, we have the Texture Controls map, and this allows you to position the texture of the material. It's particularly useful for things like wood. You can read more about that if you hover over it. Now, if we come back to Scene Settings here, and we want to click on Environment Library, and we have these different environments. Imagine these kind of like photography studios. It's basically the lighting in the room that your product will be sitting in. So I can apply these to the scene by dragging them onto the scene here. And you can see if I drag on this desert one, it's going to turn it more blue because it's reflecting the blue light of the environment. But for this one, I just want to use Cool Light. Now, I'm going to close this and click on In Canvas Render. So you can see here when I click on it, it starts to render it inside the canvas. And every time I rotate my view, it starts to re-render it again from the start. And I've sped this up for this demonstration. And on the bottom right, there's a progress bar for the status of the render. And now I want to create a ground plane. So then, if I come back to render here and move this down, I take the appearance here and I want to drop this appearance on to make it look like concrete. So now we've got our ground plane, and this will make it look more realistic. So I close this at the bottom here, and this is our rendering gallery. So next what I want to do is I want to work on this with the in-canvas render on. And I want to go back to scene settings to change the depth of field. And I'm going to make it even stronger to add more of an effect. Now we've got our in-canvas render settings. These allow you to change the settings of your in-canvas render. And if you want to create a render, then you click on this teapot icon here. I'm not too sure why it's a teapot, but why not? So here we've got image size that allows us to save the size of the image that we want, which depends on where we're going to be using it. Aspect ratio, where you can see the examples of the presets that they've got here. Exposure, and also the file formats. And you can see in this example which file format will be best inside of the brackets. And then a transparent background checkbox here. So depending on what version you've got, you can either render from the cloud or render it from your computer, which is called a local render. And then you can either render a standard or final render. Then we click on render. And you can see that the rendering is done now. And how fast it is really depends on how quick your computer is and also what you've put into the scene and the complexity of it as well. And once this is rendered, we can view it and we can also save it by clicking on this download icon here. Then we can change the file name to what we want and where we would like to save it. So I'm going to click cancel on that. And I'm going to come back here, and then to get back to where I was, I can go from render here, back to design. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you found it useful, then please do hit that like button, and also subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video. Cheers.